All right. I think we have Carl on the line.
Oh, hello.
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 Oh, hi, you can hear me.
Yes.
I was just gonna say sorry about last week. I don't know what happened. It must have been some kind of technical
Oh,
glitch.
that's right. We missed you twice. I'm sorry we couldn't pick you up.
That's okay. The first time it was my fault because the stream was on and I couldn't hear. But the second time, I'm not sure what happened. I just didn't get audio. But whatever,
Okay.
it's fine. I don't
Well,
mind.
you sound good now, so what's on your
Yeah.
mind? Glad you called back.
Oh, thank you. So I have a this is a kind of a complicated question. I'll try to phrase it in a clear way. And just to let you know, my position on this question is not very clear, but I was reading on the Atheist Experience website that, Jen, you do have a background in aerospace engineering.
That's correct.
Okay, so my question is kind of about space advocacy and the non-scientific Christian population. So how it goes is that from what I'm aware of, that scientific data returns and not ideology is what justifies kind of funding for NASA's space exploration. So, but the problem is, I've noticed these days that in a large, the large problem is that NASA just doesn't get funding for exploration, and a lot of it may be because of the lack of awareness of science. So, I'm wondering if my question is, since the Christian conservative population is not big on science, would advocating a more ideological or patriotic image of space be an indirect way to get the population to get more funding to space? Sorry, this question is kind of confusing, but it came after a talk I saw about Ted Cruz and his beliefs about space.
Yeah.
You know, American politics is complicated, to say the least.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things going on besides overtly religious issues going on. I know that we have a lot of viewers on the Atheist Experience who are fiscally conservative and are irked when we talk about what they characterize as a religious devotion to the state,
Yeah.
which we don't have. But there are a lot of right-wing politicians in the country who do expressly have an ideological opposition to spending taxes on anything that isn't strictly necessary. And what they define as necessary tend to fall under things like military operations.
Or it's in my district, therefore it's necessary.
Well, yeah, that. And space exploration is a very large-scale issue which needs support at the federal level, or ideally even at the international level, because there are some problems that people want to investigate that would actually benefit all of mankind on the whole. And
Yes.
when you have people who are basically, it's not necessarily just that they're anti-science, but even for those people who believe that science is beneficial, they believe that, for instance, only the private sector is qualified to pay for scientific investigation because in some nebulous way they want the space program to turn a profit for whoever's doing it.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah, it is kind of a confused. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, not necessarily coincidentally, the same party that tends to be opposed to funding large-scale projects also tends to be openly supportive of religious beliefs and faith.
Okay. Yeah,
in the
my
country.
question, yeah, it's a lot of information I'm squeezing into one question, but what it came from is actually surprisingly a video I saw of Ted Cruz. He's saying we should actually spend more on space exploration, which was actually something I didn't expect him to say, but
Okay, well,
he's
all
the,
politicians have different pet causes.
Yeah.
but the reason he gave though was because he saw that NASA was devoting all of its money to Earth sciences, which is like global warming and stuff like that. So maybe that's the
Yeah.
reason. But he says he wants planetary science to have much more funding than Earth science, which would maybe be a way to get us off the ground again. So I am wondering, in some sense, if some of these people aren't really moved by science, but it's more that they're moved by like ideology, like the moon landings and stuff like that, and capturing people's interest in space in almost a religious way. What I was going to say is there's some, I have some rumors, but I know this one is true. I know like Galileo probe to Jupiter, when it was studying like the internal of, it sent a probe into the actual planets and they didn't attach a camera because of quote on lack on scientific returns. So I'm wondering in some sense if science, I mean, I am an atheist, but if in some sense if science does have some limitations in raising kind of almost a spiritual kind of awe that will in turn create more funding for science and space exploration.
Well, I think that, you know,
Sorry,
feel
it's a very-
dirty
it's a
just
very hard
thinking about that.
yeah,
It's a very hard question. I'm struggling to compress it all, but it's basically can ideology fund space instead of just scientific return?
I would prefer that ideology didn't
Okay.
like get wrapped up in this. I think the best way to increase science funding, and it's a long-term project, is to improve science education. And
Okay.
you know, we have ongoing battles here in Texas with the science textbooks and the curriculum here, and that's why there's a one-of-a-kind organization here in Texas, the Texas Freedom Network, that is actively monitoring what's happening with the State Board of Education and making sure that they're not watering down the science curriculum and the other school curricula as well. So that's something I think we have to do, and I think we have to do that on an even broader scale throughout the country.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you look at what happened, I don't know if you're familiar with what happened in Kansas, where basically they've cut the funding for public education so low that some of the schools are actually closing. These are public schools. You know, so the government has an obligation to provide a public school education to children, and they're having to, you know, cut the school year down and, you know, close schools and stuff like that. So I think you know, a focus on education and not just an ideologically driven education like what some of the religious conservatives want to do,
Okay.
but real,
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
you know, fact-based education.
It's a dicey proposition to get things funded by ginning up religious interest in
Yeah.
them, because, you know, maybe they're going to fund space exploration, or maybe they're going to fund a whole bunch of, you know,
Yeah.
government-sponsored churches
Oh, yeah.
that
Oh,
need
yeah.
to be built to fix the country's spiritual crisis. So
Well,
I
you
wouldn't
never know what
trust
they're gonna
that.
And anytime we're going to make a decision and we're going to go forward with funding something, and we're going to, even if we're doing the right thing, it's important to me that we're doing the right things for the right reasons,
Okay.
and not that we're doing the right things for bad reasons. Because if you can be convinced to do the right thing for a bad reason, you can be convinced to do, you know, a bad thing for equally bad reasons. So, you know, having good reasons for what we're doing is important.
Yeah, so the reason I asked this question is I'm kind of a huge space fan, and I've noticed, the last thing I'll say is that I'm not sure if this is a hoax, but it might be an internet rumor, but apparently the first moon shuttle didn't have a window, and they said, why would the astronauts want to see the moon the first time they go around it? Like, what are the science returns of that? So that would be too scientific an approach, like only seeing things through scientific returns and not really through, it's just really cool.
No,
Yeah.
I don't buy that at all, because
Yeah, me neither.
you know, the whole idea of science is to collect as much information as possible, and then theorize in order to construct that information into a coherent picture of how the universe works. And it makes no sense to me personally that you would deliberately reduce the amount of information you have by not providing visual connection with the moon.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I doubt
I mean-
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what happened though, what also brought this whole thing together is just Ted Cruz, and I don't know if you know Michio Kaku, I don't know if I'm doing his name right, a famous theoretical physicist. They were having an argument about like whether like ideology or data should drive the space industry and NASA, so that's where it all came from. The
Oh, okay.
conflict between science and religious kind of
Well,
beliefs about
bear in
space.
mind, Ted Cruz currently represents Texas, which is where NASA is, and so
Yeah.
what Jen said applies, that politicians are more interested in things that affect their own constituents than,
Okay, so
than things in general.
Okay, yeah, so he's probably not very truthful about that then.
I don't know.
Well, yeah. I think it's a case of, you know, he maybe wants to do the right thing for the wrong reasons.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, well, okay. Well, thank you so much for answering this question. It was very complex, but I think I tried to break it down into smaller parts.
All right,
Well, have a
thanks.
nice
Thanks for
rest of
calling.
your calls.